Interior equipment maintenance area, sea level. Brett walking between rows of shadowed equipment. Looking for the cat. Nervous.
Here, kitty, kitty, kitty. Come on, baby. Hey, I'm not gonna hurt you.
You've seen him, you know his face. Harry Dean Stanton, perhaps one of the most prolific character actors of his generation or any other. He's been working professionally in film and television for almost 6 decades, and at age 89, he hasn't stopped. This is a man who is so intertwined in the world of show business. He's been friends with Jack Nicholson, Sean Penn, Marlon Brando. He helped Chris Christopherson start his career. He's played music with Bob Dylan. He's worked with some of the greatest film directors of his time and has delivered some of the most honest and real performances as an actor. And he does it all effortlessly. Harry Dean Stanton was born on July 14th, 1926 in West Irvine, Kentucky. His father, Sheridan Harry Stanton, was a tobacco farmer and barber. His mother, Ursula Moberly, was a hairdresser. In a 1997 issue of Venice magazine, he says, "I always had a dramatic flair. I'd like to dress up as a cowboy, play make-believe, but I didn't realize acting was something I had to do until I was in college." He was also interested in singing at a young age. When he attended Lafayette High School in Kentucky, he was part of a barbershop quartet and the Glee Club. After graduating high school in 1944, like many young men at the time, he served in World War II. He was a naval officer. He was a cook and also sang in the military choir. Here he is talking about it in the documentary Harry Dean Stanton, Partly Fiction.
And did you go to the war?
Yeah.
Which service were you in?
In the Navy.
What kind of ship were you on?
LST, the landing ship tanks, but we carried troops and we ended up as an ammunition ship.
And where was you in the Pacific, but whereabouts?
Battle of Okinawa.
Wow.
The Battle of Okinawa lasted for 82 days and included the largest amphibious assault in the Pacific War. It was one of the final Allied victories, along with the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, that ultimately led to the surrender of Japan in September of 1945. In a 2013 article for The Guardian, Stanton says, "I was lucky not to have been blown up or killed. I was there when the Japanese suicide planes were coming in. Fortunately, they missed our boat. Took me a while to readjust after I went back home and went to college in Lexington, Kentucky." When he came home, Harry attended the University of Kentucky. There he majored in journalism and the radio arts, but at the same time acted in the college drama group. He was cast in a production of Pygmalion. He enjoyed the experience so much he decided to become an actor, but he didn't want to exclusively do stage work. He has his own reasons.
I was trained on the stage. I did Shakespeare, did Greek drama, everything. But I wanted to be in the movies. I didn't care about stage. I still don't. It's too much work. It takes too long and they don't pay enough.
And did it help to meet women?
Of course. That's one reason I did it, I think. Like every male, every man wants to get laid.
In 1949, he left college without graduating, hopped on a Greyhound bus, and made his way to the Pasadena Playhouse near Los Angeles, California, where he continued to hone his craft.
Yeah, I was there 4 years at the Playhouse. When I was 52 or 3, I went back to Kentucky, did a play there at the college. I was quit after 3 years in college. So I went back there and did a couple of plays. I got on a road tour, American Male Chorus. It was a choral group.
Years later, after leaving the Pasadena Playhouse and getting odd singing and acting jobs around the country, he began his on-screen acting career in 1957. From 1957 through 1966, Stanton worked non-stop in film and television, but mostly television. He was cast prominently in 2 genres, westerns and crime dramas. And around that time, there were a lot of westerns and crime dramas. As different as these genres were, he always seemed to be playing a bad guy, the unsavory character.
I told you, Lieutenant, you had the wrong guy. I shouldn't even be here.
The creep.
Portland, Oregon, not too long ago.
How long ago?
About 3 weeks, I guess.
You guess?
The asshole.
I'd like a little respect. I told you before I don't like people I'm talking to walk away from me. Look at me. You look at me when I talk to you.
I'm looking, but I don't see anything.
Every once in a while, he played just kind of a neutral or likable character, but for the most part, you were supposed to hate him. In television, he was in landmark shows like Rawhide, Gunsmoke, Alfred Hitchcock Presents, The Rifleman, The Lawless Years, Bonanza, The Fugitive, The Untouchables, and so many more that I can't even find footage of anywhere. As a supporting actor in these shows, he was perfect. He even had the right look about him. I don't know what it is, but I feel like some actors look like they really belong in a specific decade. I think about that every time I see Steve Buscemi playing a character in the 1920s or 30s. He just fits. That's the way it was with Harry Dean Stanton. Another thing I want to touch on is Stanton's singing talent. As I brought up in the Michael Jeter episode, Jeter's talents as a singer and dancer weren't always put on display in the roles he played, but every once in a while a director would recognize these talents and put them to good use in whatever project he was in. Harry Dean Stanton, who had a passion for singing when he was younger, would every once in a while use his talents in one of his roles. He can sing and play the guitar, and as early as 1962 in a show called Checkmate, those talents were on display. He played a singing hobo.
Play on those new strings you bought today.
Hallelujah, I'm a bum. Hallelujah, bum again. Hallelujah, give us a handout, revive us again.
But even with the occasional opportunity to present his other talents, Stanton recalls these earlier roles as negative experiences. In a 1985 interview for the Washington Post, he talks about a film he did called Tomahawk Trail. Tomahawk Trail, that was a joke. They shot that in 4 days or 4.5 and edited it in about a week. That was my second film. Revolt at Fort Laramie was the first. I played a Union soldier in both of them. I was acting all over the place, doing things with my hands. It was embarrassing.
I guess it's all over.
Miller, it's not all over for him yet. There'll be a board of inquiry, you know. And he'll need all the help he can get.
Tell him for me that I'll be on his side.
Thanks, Miller.
In the same interview, on his roles in crime dramas, he says, "I was a classic cop killer. That's what started me off. I was totally believable as a cop killer. I was a hired killer for years, and now I want to hang up my guns. I want to hang up my guns and play lovers for the rest of my life." He continues, "You want to know what it's like playing supporting roles your whole life? It's frustrating. All the supporting parts and characters I've played, I've hated it. It's awful doing the same kind of emotion over and over again, and I don't see why people are not more aware of it. Acting is very personal. You use your own psyche. If you have to deal with negative emotions, it becomes a drain after a while. So I guess after decades of playing asshole soldiers, cowboys, gangsters, he got tired of it because it was just draining to be that negative all the time. And maybe there was more to it than that. Maybe he's referring to the monotony of it all, like when you play the same roles over and over again. You're not necessarily growing as an actor. You're not exploring other characters and broadening your skills. Fortunately, there was a turning point, both internal and external. First off, the times changed, as did the film industry. Movies became more raw, more real, partly due to the fact that as the 60s progressed, the content of films was no longer restricted by the Motion Picture Production Code, which is really interesting if you get the chance to check it out. Among other things, it prevented heavy profanity and suggestive nudity, which is why when you look back at some of these old movies, they seem a little more innocent. In addition to this change, more and more actors were employing method acting, having studied under acting teachers like Lee Strasberg or Stella Adler. As a result, there was a recognizable shift from this old style of acting and filmmaking to a new wave of naturalism. Harry Dean Stanton was one of many actors working before, during, and after this change. And the roles that he was cast in were more nuanced and natural and real, but there was another change, and it came from inside himself. In 1966, Jack Nicholson, who Stanton had quickly become friends with, wrote and starred in a western called Ride in the Whirlwind, and offered Stanton a role in it. On multiple occasions, Stanton has cited this film as a turning point in his perspective on acting.
So he came to me and said, "Harry, I've written this part. It's called Ride in the Whirlwind. I want you to play a gangster. He wears a derby and an eye patch, and his name is Blind Dick Riley. He's the head of the gang." He said, "But I don't want you to do anything. Just play yourself totally. And I thought, wow, that's a load off my mind. and I've been working ever since.
So, with this new philosophy and facing a new era of filmmaking, Harry Dean Stanton started getting more substantial and interesting roles. Now, there's a lot of projects here. I'm only going to go through the highlights. He played a singing prisoner in Cool Hand Luke.
Through the days of toil that's near, if I fall, dear Lord, who cares?
An FBI agent in The Godfather Part 2.
Well, just get a good night's sleep.
Yeah, good night.
Got a big day tomorrow. Got you a new suit, a new shirt, new tie. I'm gonna shave you myself in the morning. And you're gonna look respectable for 50 million of your fellow Americans.
And of course, Brett in Alien.
I mean, he's got a disease. Why don't we stop it where it is? You can always get to the doctor when we get back home.
Right.
Whenever he says anything, you say, right, Brett. You know that?
Right.
There are some other honorable mentions too, like Cisco Pike starring Chris Christopherson. It was his first leading role in a film, and Stanton helped him get it. They're still friends to this day. They worked together again in the western Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, with Stanton's other friend, Bob Dylan. Stanton's fond of telling this story where he and Bob Dylan ruined a shot.
Oh, I had forgotten about that. That was perfect. We were shooting a scene at sunset. It was supposed to be sunset for sunrise. And we're just halfway through the scene when into the background comes Harry Dean and Bob Dylan jogging. What are you doing? He said, you know, you just ruined the shot for the whole day, that we have to do it tomorrow. And he says, Sam, I was running after him, trying to tell him to get out of there. That
Which
was
is a total lie.
It was a total lie, and everybody knew it.
He also worked with Jack Nicholson again in the western The Missouri Breaks, which is also where he met and worked with Marlon Brando, whom he grew close with in later years. One thing that seems prevalent during this period of Stanton's career is that he stopped doing TV, with the rare exception. He almost exclusively did films, and for the most part, seemed to do dramas. At this point in his career, even though he continued to play supporting roles, he seemed to be more selective with the jobs that he took. The next milestone in Harry Dean Stanton's career came in 1984, when playwright Sam Shepard approached him to act in the film Paris, Texas.
Sam Shepard and I, we met in Albuquerque, New Mexico, I think. And I was talking about I wanted to do a film with some intelligence and sensitivity and something worthwhile. And I wasn't pitching myself at all. I got back to Los Angeles, and about a week later he called me, said, do you want to do the lead in a film I've written called Paris, Texas? Said the guy doesn't talk for 30 minutes, the first 30 minutes. And that hooked me right away.
Stanton played Travis, a man who, for reasons unknown at the beginning of the film, is wandering aimlessly through the desert with nothing but a near-empty jug of water. Only when his brother, played by Stanton's friend Dean Stockwell, comes to find him, do we slowly learn who he is and why he's there.
You mind telling me where you're headed, Trav? What's out there? There's nothing out there.
This is a beautiful movie, sometimes funny, sometimes sad, and Stanton, true to his word, simply played himself. Stanton received critical acclaim for his performance and has cited the film as his favorite film he's ever worked on. Also, released the same year, Stanton had a sizable role in this really goofy sci-fi comedy called Repo Man. It starred Emilio Estevez, who's recruited by Stanton into the world of repossessing cars.
Hey, look at that. Look at those assholes over there. Ordinary fucking people. I hate them.
Me too.
What do you know, kid?
See, an ordinary person spends his life avoiding tense situations. Repo Man spends his life getting into tense situations. Let's go get a drink.
To describe any more of this movie would ruin the surprises later on. Just trust me, if you're in the mood for something out there, like Rocky Horror Picture Show out there, check it out. After Paris, Texas, despite playing a leading role for the first time in his career, he never played a lead again. On multiple occasions, he's said that he's had opportunities presented to him over the years to play leading men, but it was usually something that he didn't want to do for one reason or another.
I had a chance, I was offered a whole career. I could have been a leading man, much more famous, much richer, and with more pussy than on screen and off than I've ever had. Those are the words they used. John Carpenter, his people, used that phrase. They offered me a series, playing a private investigator. And that would have led, of course, to me being a leading man.
But you didn't want it?
I didn't, too much work. What was that David Lynch film that Dennis Hopper did?
Blue Velvet?
Blue Velvet, yeah. He wanted to meet me on that, and I didn't want to deal with those emotions.
So you would have played the Dennis Hopper part?
Yeah.
Whatever the reason, I think he had reached an age where he could pretty much do whatever he wanted. He wasn't taking anything that came down the pipeline anymore, and when you reach a point where you're comfortable, why overexert yourself? Now, some actors might not agree with a decision like that, if that is how he's thinking. It reminds me of this clip from the documentary Harry Dean Stanton Partly Fiction, where his assistant's talking about him.
He's kind of the Forrest Gump of Hollywood. Not by any means the lack of intelligence, but in the way he just stumbles through extraordinary circumstances.
That's a pretty good summation of his career. He just kind of floats from one thing to the other, and even though it seems effortless, he's left this remarkable legacy behind him. So, from 1984 to present day, he continued to pop up everywhere. Again, I know I'm skipping a lot of projects, but here are the highlights. He was Molly Ringwald's father in Pretty in Pink.
Why can't you just forget her?
It's late. You got school.
No, don't walk out on this. Will you please just listen to me? Please?
I've already been through this, Andy.
Sure, you go through it every day. You're still going through it. Why can't you just realize that she's gone and she's not going to come back? She's never coming back.
Shut up!
God Why can't you accept it? She's just gone. Why can't you accept it?
Because I love her, that's why.
Wow, he's so good in this scene, it's really powerful, which makes it all the more funny when you hear his response years later to a question about Pretty in Pink on Doug Loves Movies.
Do you have an opinion of who she should have ended up with? She did end up with Blaine, the rich guy, but a lot of people think she should have ended up with her best friend Ducky. Are you happy with how they ended the movie with her ending up with Blaine as her dad?
I don't give a fuck, man.
He played a disciple of Jesus in The Last Temptation of Christ.
I created the truth out of what people needed and what they believed. If I have to crucify you to save the world, then I'll crucify you. And if I have to resurrect you, then I'll do that too, whether you like it or not.
I won't let you. I'll tell everyone the truth.
Go ahead. Go on. Tell them now. Who's gonna believe you?
He played a judge in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
They gave you what?
LSD.
Castration! Double castration!
And one of my personal favorites, The Green Mile.
Walking the mile, walking the mile.
You have anything to say before your sentence is carried out?
Yeah. I want a fried chicken dinner with gravy on the taters, and I want a shit in your hat. I got to have Mae West sit on my face, 'cause I'm one horny motherfucker.
It was also in the 90s when he began his relationship with David Lynch, who cast him in 6 of his films over the years.
Harry Dean was in The Cowboy and the Frenchman, Wild at Heart, Hotel Room, Straight Story, Inland Empire, and Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me.
Oh, we've done a whole 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things together.
Wow.
Another notable role was that of Roman Grant, a polygamist in the HBO series Big Love. And there were some other roles he had, roles that seemed to be written specifically for him. He had gotten to a point, I think, where people in the film industry saw him as a legend, this mysteriously cool actor from old Hollywood. He was in an episode of Chuck, playing a character that was a callback to his role in Repo Man.
Look, if this has anything to do with my mom, or Albania, or Tangiers, or that cafe in Budapest, which was not even... Anyway, the point is, we have explanations for all of that.
What are you talking about? I'm here for the car. A Repo Man.
Repo Man? Morgan? Right. You haven't made a payment in 4 months. The car cost $900.
He had a funny scene in The Avengers with Mark Ruffalo.
Did I hurt anybody? There's nobody around here to get hurt. You did scare the hell out of some pigeons, though.
And here he is doing some comedy in an episode of 2.5 Men.
Do any of you get up in the middle of the night to pee?
Sure. Occasionally.
Sometimes I don't even get up.
After all these years in dramatic roles, it's refreshing and kind of odd, really, to see him in a sitcom. In fact, it was just as odd to see him host an episode of Saturday Night Live back in the 80s. Instead of doing an opening monologue, he played some blues. And here he is in a sketch with Robert Downey Jr. and Joan Cusack, where he plays a drunk.
I don't know. What'd you think about me?
Truthfully,
Truthfully.
I thought you were gay.
So I'm just trying to be sociable. You think I'm a jerk, right? Well, I'm a nice guy. Can you give me a light?
No, I don't smoke.
No, I mean a Bud Light.
So in the past decade, Stanton has arguably been lifted to the position of Hollywood royalty. He's that perfect balance of notoriety. He's not an A-lister, but everyone knows who he is, and he's respected. The actor's actor. And like I said before, he's still working with a project coming out in 2016. So now you have an idea of what his career was like. You might still be asking yourself, who is this guy? Well, that is the $20,000 question. Almost all of his life, he's managed to maintain an air of mystery. Maybe he does it consciously, knowing it just keeps people interested in him. Or maybe it's just how he is.
I'm gonna call Ups's number and see if they can tell me who you are.
I didn't quite touch on his personal life too much, and that's not for lack of trying. Harry Dean Stanton doesn't really talk about his personal life. Or he might a little bit, depending on what kind of mood he's in. Every interview I've seen or read with this man, he's either really engaged, or he's giving the interviewer really short, succinct answers and not opening up. Also, if you search for interviews with Stanton, you're going to find a lot of conversations about his philosophies on life, how life is all predetermined and we have no control over anything that happens.
Ultimately, it's not important, and I don't say that in a negative sense. Ultimately, it's not important. It's all going to go. It's just a fucking dream, man, all of it. And it's not being cynical or nihilistic, or you can put all kind of labels on it, but it's just what is, and period.
He's a guy that lives in the present. If you don't know all this about Stanton and you haven't really done your research, you're not going to get much out of him. Just ask Harper Simon, who in one of the most cringeworthy conversations ever recorded on film, attempts to interview Stanton on his show, Talk Show.
Hi, and welcome to...
Oh boy, that was a nice 3 seconds of staring into the camera. Jeez, you want to brush your hair, put on something decent? He looks like he just rolled out of bed. He spends the first 2 minutes of the interview just kissing Stanton's ass, which Stanton clearly doesn't like.
You're welcome.
It's very sweet of you, because you really don't have to come on the show. You're not going to get any kind of bump whatsoever for being on the show. You're just a sweetheart to come and talk with me.
Yeah.
Hey, Harper Simon, he probably doesn't want to be praised. He's been praised his whole life, and I bet this all sounds like bullshit to him after so many years.
Was that daunting for you to?
Oh my gosh!
You were suddenly this leading man and working with Wim Wenders and
Not
Sam
at all.
Shepard? No.
Not a bit. Just another role.
Just another role, huh?
Did this guy prepare anything at all?
What the hell is that?
I don't know. Piece of tape? Is that from your mic?
I don't know.
Did he not think to edit that awkward beat out of the interview? Comedian Mark Maron put together a solid attempt at interviewing Stanton on his podcast, but was kind of taken aback by how much Stanton didn't really give him anything in terms of an interview.
I interviewed Harry Dean Stanton today. I went to his house, and after that I was so troubled on some level that I interviewed Sophie Huber, the director of the documentary Partly Fiction that she directed about Harry Dean. It's more of a cinematic portrait of Harry Dean. It's quite a beautiful movie. But I needed to get her in here after I talked to him to help me understand him.
The documentary Maron's referring to, which I've been using footage of throughout this episode, is probably the best window into exactly who Harry Dean Stanton is. The whole documentary is more of a mood piece. It gives you a feeling of who he is without really saying anything. He tells old stories, he gets a drink at a bar he's been going to for years, he sings Mexican songs.
Que lejos estoy del suelo donde nacido. Intensa nostalgia invade mi pensamiento.
Here's Sophie Huber, the director, talking about it on Mark Maron's podcast.
First of all, it took a very long time to persuade him to agree to do it. He really didn't want to do a documentary. You know, he believes in living in the moment, so the past doesn't really interest him much.
Yeah.
Which makes a linear biography somewhat strange. So I wanted to create something that is more in his head, you know, that you feel like you spend time with him rather than just telling, you know, his story from A to Z.
Well, you could, yeah, because you could tell that story on your own. I mean, you could line up, you know, you could sit there with the research and film clips and even narrate your own history of Harry Dean Stanton, but that wouldn't serve the same purpose.
Huh. Okay, so granted, what I did is probably more of a straightforward biography, but if you want to try and get inside Stanton's head, check out the documentary. So in the end, how can you describe Harry Dean Stanton? He's a singer, a musician, an actor, a war veteran, philosopher maybe? When David Lynch asked Harry how he would describe himself, he said,
There's nothing. There's no self.
And then he asked him,
How would you like to be remembered?
Doesn't matter.
After all that's said and done, Harry Dean Stanton isn't one for bullshit. Is this who he really is? After the life he's led, does he truly have no ego whatsoever? Maybe he does, but he keeps it hidden. Maybe the irony is that for years he's been playing himself in films, but in real life, he's playing someone else. I'd only be speculating. Maybe some things aren't worth picking apart. Harry Dean Stanton seems like a man who just lets things be. To wrap things up, here's a clip of Stanton singing a song in Partly Fiction. A song that, in my opinion, sums up who he is, or at least how he sees himself. Take it away, Harry.
Everybody talking at me. Can't hear a word they're saying. The echoes on my mind. People stop and staring. I can't see their faces. Only shadows of their eyes. I'm going where the sun keeps shining through the pouring rain. Going where the climate suits my clothes. Banking on the northeast wind, sailing on a summer breeze. Skipping over the ocean like a stone. Everybody talking at me. Ain't hear a word they say. The echoes on my mind. And I won't let you leave my love behind. And I won't let you leave my love behind. And I won't let you leave my love behind.
Pretty song,
What the hell is that?
I don't know. Piece of tape? Is that from your mic?
I don't know. Yeah, it's gone.
Anyway,